Hi, Otto here for Bavarian Autosport. Today we're going to be doing a brake bleed and flush on this 95 M3. All BMW models will be somewhat similar with minor differences depending on the exact model. The tools we'll use today, main tool, is the Bavarian Autosport pressure bleeder. This allows you to bleed the system without having a helper pump the brake pedal. The catch bottle for the fluid. Our fluid, this car goes to the track, so we'll be using the ATE blue or gold. This car already has blue in it, so we'll be using gold so we can tell when the fresh fluid comes through by changing the colors. We have the digital torque wrench for the wheel lugs, along with the non-marring 17mm lug socket. And we have our rubber gloves to keep our hands clean, the lighter duty black gloves and the heavy duty blue gloves. Additionally, we have a 7mm and an 8mm box end wrench. These are combinations, box on one end, open on the other. We'll use the box end to open our bleeder screws. Most of the time we'll be using 7mm on most BMWs. We have our Bavarian Autosport fender mat, and with that we're ready to start. Here we have our initial setup at the master cylinder where we're going to feed in the fresh fluid under pressure from the bleeder. So what we'll do here is first we'll fill the bleeder. Now you'll notice that this is over a gallon worth of capacity. We don't fill that with the brake fluid. We want air volume in there so we can pressurize it. We only want to put 1 liter of fluid in at a time. So we have the gold fluid here because we already have blue in the reservoir from the last bleeding. And this way we can tell when the fresh fluid comes through, since this particular vehicle, as we had mentioned, does go to the track and the fluid gets bled before each event. So the fluid never gets nasty looking. So we're going to fill the reservoir. We'll put the whole liter in. In doing a flush on most BMWs, once you've got it down, you can do the flush usually with 1 liter of fluid. However, we do recommend that most people purchase 2 liters so that just in case you pull more fluid through than you actually need to, you don't end up 3/4 of the way done and you're out of fluid. You can always put the extra liter, the extra amount, back on the shelf for top-ups or the next time you need to bleed. So there we've got our 1 liter in, comes up to there. Put the cap on. And we snug it down. It does need to seal. So we've got the fluid sealed in. We will pressurize with the pump up here. This is a pressure relief valve. If we need to open the container when there's pressure in it, we would relieve the pressure first, then open the container. All right, now that we have our fluid in the pressure bleeder, we're ready to prepare the fluid reservoir for the master cylinder. We'll remove the cap first. And just lay it on a rag to catch the dripping fluid. Now we're going to pull out the current fluid so we don't have to flush that all the way through the system as well. We'll use the fluid pump that we carry. This is part number FP500, fluid pump 500. We can use it for fluid extraction or for filling transmissions and differentials under the car. So simply in the fluid and extract. We got a few ounces out, which just means that's that much. We don't need to push through the entire system. this up a little bit. And now this cap is on a quick disconnect. Simply remove it, screw it onto the reservoir, connect the quick disconnect, make sure it's secure, and we're ready to go at this point. Now we'll simply pump the bottle up to about 20 pounds per square inch on the gauge. One other point, right here we have the fluid line coming off the reservoir that goes to the clutch master cylinder. This normally does not have a hose clamp on it. When we're pressurizing the reservoir, you may want to put a hose clamp on this line just to be sure it doesn't blow off. We've never had it happen, but we have talked to people who have blown that hose off without a hose clamp on it. So it's just a safety measure so that you don't make a mess. So we'll now pump the bottle. Now we've got about 20 pounds of pressure. We're ready to do the bleeding. We'll start with the right rear, then go to the left rear, then the right front, and then the left front. The sequence isn't critical, but that's a standard accepted procedure, especially on systems that have a single line to the rear. That way we don't have to pull as much fluid through the system. With that, we'll go over to one of our wheels. Okay, here we are at the right front wheel, and we'll show you the actual bleeding process here. Here's our bleeder screw, rubber cap on top. We'll simply remove the rubber cap, loosen the screw. We have our 7mm box end wrench. Now the reason we want to use a box end is if this screw is tight, we don't want to round off the hex. This one is fine because, again, this one gets bled regularly. We'll simply make sure it opens, okay? And you want to do that before you start. So this is all set there. We'll leave the wrench on. Take our receiver bottle with the rubber cap on top. Simply push that onto the bleeder. Make sure it's secure. We'll hold it and open the bleeder about a half a turn. Now, at that point, you can see the blue fluid coming through the line, and we are filling the bottle. We'll simply let this run until we see the fresh fluid coming through. When we see the gold fluid coming through, we'll know we have fully fresh fluid. Okay, now you can see this is lightening up. The gold fluid is coming through now. A little bit of blue and gold mixing in, but obviously much lighter than the full blue. And you can see we've pulled this much fluid out. And we have full gold coming through now. This tube is tinted a little blue from all the blue fluid that's been run through it. At this point, we simply close the bleeder, make sure the cap stays on. Close the bleeder, snug it, doesn't have to be super tight. Pop the cap off, and this wheel is done. We simply wipe up the little bit of dribble, remove the wrench, clean things up, pop the cap back on. This wheel is fully done and we're ready to move on to the next wheel. That's pretty darn simple. Now, as you can see, we did finish this caliper. One note, you can see how much fluid we pulled through on that caliper. Just keep an eye on the fluid in your main pressure bottle and make sure the fluid doesn't run out while you're doing the work. If the fluid gets low, simply stop, close your bleeder, depressurize the bottle, add more fluid, pressurize the bottle, and start again and continue on. That would be the final thing, and adjust your fluid level in the reservoir when you're done, and you're all set.